We go. Hello, Namaskar. I'm Priti Prakash. And today I have with me my special guest, Vice Admiral Anil Kumar Chawla, PVSM, AVSM, NM, VSM, ADC. He has commanded the Southern Naval Command. He's also been Flag Officer commanding Eastern Fleet. He's author of many books on maritime strategy. He oversaw Operation Rahat in 2015, wherein we evacuated Indians from Yemen. He has also participated in Operation Pawan in Sri Lanka. Welcome, Admiral Chawla. So let me start. Amidst this Middle East, West Asia crisis, I would want to know, that in the Arabian Sea, we've just seen commercial ships being attacked by Houthis, and Indian Navy has been escorting those ships as a matter to provide them safety. Then we've also seen a recent attack in the Red Sea, where the Somalian ship, a Liberian ship heading to Somalia, was attacked by pirates. Had pirates in them, and again India took an operation to save that ship. So I mean, how do you see all this as far as the Indian condition is concerned, and what are the challenges we expect in these waters?
Thank you very much. That's a very comprehensive question. The western seaboard of India, particularly the Red Sea, which then joins up in the Arabian Sea via the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, and the Persian Gulf, which joins up with the north in Arabian Sea via the Strait of Hormuz. Both these waterways, I have called them arcs of maritime instability. And indeed, there's another arc to our east, but we are not talking about that today. Because if you see this entire arc, it's when starting off from the Suez Canal itself, where you have the conflict going on between Israel and the Palestinians. And earlier, it used to be between Israel and Egypt, and thankfully that has subsided. But then as you come eastwards, you find the conflicts going on between Eritrea and Ethiopia, then further south, Sudan and South Sudan. When you look north, you have the Yemen conflict going on. And as you come out of the Horn of Africa and the Horn of Arabia, both these horns, the Horn of Africa has got the failed state of Somalia, from where piracy has emanated since 2008. And currently we have the civil war that's ongoing in Yemen, from where the disturbances to shipping have emerged over the last few months, driven by the Israel-Palestine conflict, backed, of course, by Iranian support and weapons. Now, this entire, and in the north, if you see, there is an ongoing struggle between the West and Iran over its nuclear program. And that area has traditionally been unsettled. There has been a prolonged Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s, followed by the two Gulf conflicts in 1990 and 2002. So you see that this entire area has been prone to conflicts pretty much since the Second World War, and this is an ongoing feature. On top of that, this is also, both of them are critical waterways. The Persian Gulf is home to more than 50% of the world's oil and global gas imports. The Red Sea is the crucial waterway which connects the Mediterranean, that's pretty much Europe and Eastern USA, to the Indian Ocean region and beyond, to East Asia. So they are critical waterways which are flanked by these areas of instability. And periodically they erupt into instability. As far as India is concerned, 60% of our oil and gas imports are coming from the Persian Gulf, because that's the shortest route, it's the cheapest way to get it. It's just a 2-day transit from the Persian Gulf to Gujarat and the west coast of India, other ports on the west coast of India. And therefore, we find that most of our oil and gas comes from there. Similarly, a lot of our oil and gas from Saudi Arabia and the United States comes through the Suez Canal. Plus, of course, 50% of our trade, which goes westwards to the Mediterranean, to Europe, and to Eastern USA, and our imports that come, are all from this waterway. So this is a huge impact on our economy and our maritime security. And therefore, there is a need for us to be proactive and ensure that our interests are protected in these critical waterways.
So, do you think the present policy which the government is following or exercising, is it enough for at least our interests, Indian isn't interests?
No country can control or police these waterways alone. It's a huge area of, over 2 million square kilometers of sea, which is difficult to fathom. It's much more than the land area or equal to the land area of India in some cases, in part. So you'll find that you cannot, with the resources that you have, be there continuously. It would be an overstretch. And therefore, there is a requirement for us to collaborate. And indeed, there is collaboration going on with other like-minded nations. There is a requirement for us to share intelligence and share operational information. And this is an ongoing process. So what India is doing it has enhanced its presence by deploying 7 frontline warships to the Red Sea. Earlier, we have already been deploying for the last now 4 years a warship to the Persian Gulf, to the Strait of Hormuz, to escort our shipping coming out of their Indian flag shipping. And we've always had since 2008 one warship deployed in the Gulf of Aden on anti-piracy patrol. So now both these patrols will have to remain, but they'll have to be beefed up, particularly the one in the Red Sea. So therefore, what we are doing is for the time being fine. But I think in the long term, there is a need obviously for diplomatic solutions and solutions on land, because what is happening on land is having the spill-on effect onto the sea. And therefore, what we are doing is okay for the time being, but I think there needs to be a much more proactive policy as a major power in concert with other major powers in the region, where we take a more proactive role in resolving this through diplomatic and political dialogue.
Okay, and is Indian Navy also prepared enough to protect our exports from the Red Sea? As you just said, also that our deployments are pretty good out there.
Yes, I mean, essentially what we do is we protect Indian flagships. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you look at it, we don't have too many Indian flagships. Most of our imports and most of global imports also are carried in foreign flagships. In our case, a large majority is carried in Chinese, owned or Chinese flagships, or in neutral flagships like Liberian flagged or Panama flagged. Now, basically, this flag means that these ships are registered in that country. They could be carrying a variety of cargo. So very few ships will have a cargo specifically bound for one country. Oil would be one cargo, which you would be sending from point to point. So there would be, let's say, a shipment from Jebel Ali in the Gulf to India, let's say the port of Kochi or the port of Kandla on the west coast. But otherwise, all ships, container ships, bulk carriers carry multiple amounts of cargo. So they are like container ships are particularly an example where they will have cargo for maybe 10 or 20 countries. And, it'll be like a dropping operations, like a railway train stopping off at a station and offloading the containers that are to be offloaded at a particular destination and then taking on. So there is in a sense, the need to protect shipping in general, apart from Indian flag shipping, because both of them are carrying goods for us or could be carrying goods for us. So therefore, as I mentioned, even our deployments, while we have sent 7 ships now, it's not sustainable in the long run. It needs to be a collaborative effort with other countries so that can be sustained. And ultimately, as I said, the solution lies in political and diplomatic resolution assured.
Okay. Now, India is a major power player in the Indian Ocean region, and we are heavily invested in various groupings like the IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association. Then even Sagar is one of our very big initiatives, which is disaster relief and humanitarian assistance program. Then there's the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium we are there in. So being I mean, our presence being so heavily there, don't you think now it's time that India needs to have a more assertive, India needs to play a more assertive role or a more coercive role in this region, particularly when countries across the globe are now looking up to India to play that leadership role in the region?
Yeah, all these initiatives that you spoke about are at different levels. For example, IORA is a long-standing initiative which is not really security related. It deals with many other issues such as environment, trade, the maritime connectivity, and recently they have had a small security segment to it. So it is essentially for maritime collaboration in non-security formats, and it is an on and off organization because it's a huge variety of countries there. So I would say it's a deliberative sort of a forum at which people debate various issues for the collective good of the Indian Ocean region, and largely it is devoted to non-military issues. As far as the IONS is concerned, this is a Indian Navy initiative, the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, and this brings together all the navies of all the Indian Ocean rim littorals, as also some countries that operate here, in such as the United States, the United Kingdom, etc., who are observers in this forum. And under this, entire ambit, the aim was to get a sense of interoperability and communication established between the navies of all the countries operating here, because there's a lot of there are many differences and views, particularly, let's say, between India and Pakistan, or maybe between Iran and the US. So the aim was to get everybody together at the chiefs of the Navy and at other senior officers levels, wherein we could then discuss issues of common interest. And so we have established various subgroupings under this IONS, such as the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, the information sharing, and such like issues. Training has also been proposed as subgroup, wherein it is leading to greater communication and interoperability between the navies. And there are some tangible takeaways that are coming out of it. As far as Sagar is concerned, Sagar is there's a national policy espoused by the Prime Minister in 2015, that is security and growth for all in the region, which is essentially, another version of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So essentially what the Prime Minister said was that India's maritime policy as such would be to ensure that all countries benefit from the security that will be engendered by countries acting together in the Indian Ocean region, and that will lead obviously to economic growth and therefore prosperity for people. Now, as far as more assertive role is concerned, I think India has traditionally not been an assertive power, which is, to my mind, not a bad thing, because that gives you much more acceptability. We have asserted where required, but in a general sense, we have not been assertive. We have been, allowing smaller nations and everybody, like the IONS, for example, even though India started it, it is not India specific. We don't have an India specific secretariat to it. The leadership is rotated amongst all countries on a rotational basis. In fact, India was the leader only the first time around in 2008. After that, it has been rotating to all other countries. It will come back to India one day. But the essence is to give, because India being a huge country here, and there are various sizes of countries, like, for example, Maldives, probably the tiniest country here, or even Seychelles, to give them a sense of confidence that they are not being trampled upon. That is important. I mean, both from our philosophical point of view and actually from a psychological and security point of view. So I would say that India has taken an assertive role where required. But otherwise, we have ensured that we have catered to the sensitivities of smaller countries and allowed everybody enough space and given them equal status. So I think that is in the long term a much better policy. because if you become too assertive, like China has become indeed, then it leads to a sense of alienation and insecurity. And in the long run, it is not beneficial.
Okay. Now shifting focus to the China factor. Will you call our maritime strategy very China centric? And how do you think we can keep China at bay in this region, particularly when we see the string of pearls they've built from Sri Lanka, 99 years lease to on Hambantota, then in Cambodia, Djibouti they are there, Myanmar they are building, Bangladesh they are there. So this kind of circling India, uh, how do you see India's naval and defense strategy, maritime strategy?
You
Is
know,
it China?
we follow the dictum as far as the maritime strategy is concerned, and fortunately, I was the author of both the current versions and the past version. That is, we have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. We have permanent interests. So, which is a very old dictum by a great British statesman. So now, if we follow that dictum, the essence is that we need to concentrate on building up our capabilities. And we should have a range of capabilities taking into mind the capabilities that the opposition at the current juncture presents us. So at the current juncture, the principal opposition really is from China and to some extent from Pakistan. So when we see that, but we cannot ignore other countries as well, because as I said, no country has permanent friends or permanent enemies. Everybody has only their interests at heart, which are permanent. So therefore, the aim has been, as far as the force capability building is concerned, is to have a range of capabilities which can be then used as required. And that I think that approach is correct and needs to be retained. As far as the China focus is concerned, I think China is a focus generally of the world for since the last at least 20 years plus. And we are worried about China in particular because of their ingress into the Indian Ocean. And when you spoke about the string of pearls, that now has been, of course, that was not a Chinese policy. That was just a policy paper written by somebody which made it a string of pearls, which essentially meant a set of a sort of series of infrastructure projects, maritime infrastructure projects taken up by China, as you rightly mentioned, in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, in Bangladesh, in Cambodia, even to some extent in Malaysia, and then on to Pakistan and Djibouti and East Africa and beyond. Now that has really been replaced, if I can put it that way, or supplanted by the Belt and Road Initiative. And the Belt and Road Initiative has two legs. One is the landward leg, which goes through Central Asia, and the seaward leg, or the Maritime Silk Route, as they call it, the MSR. That is the one which the Chinese have promulgated in 2014. And that is what they are now following up. And that route really leads through the Indian Ocean into the Mediterranean. And so they have earmarked ports and countries along the route in which to build maritime and land infrastructure. The largest is the CPEC, or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which culminates in Gwadar Port, in the Balochistan province. So the focus necessarily of the Indian Navy has shifted to China because of its inimical attitude on the northern borders. It claims 100,000 square kilometers of Indian territory, and the fact that it has built close maritime ties with a number of our neighbors, which are not really to our entire liking, and is gradually building up maritime infrastructure. Possibly, that's my view of with the dual aim of ultimately turning them into military bases one day. As you mentioned, Djibouti has already become the first Chinese military base. The Cam Bay in the Riem port in Cambodia is the second one, which has not yet been declared, but is likely to be declared soon. And Gwadar and Hambantota could possibly be Chinese military facilities, host Chinese military facilities in the future as well. So therefore, the focus of the Indian Navy currently is on looking at how China can threaten us in the maritime area, because China is deploying its forces here in great strength in the Indian Ocean since 2008 in particular. under the pretext of the anti-piracy operations, under the excuse of protecting its trade. Now, which is a fact that most of its trade in oil does pass through the Indian Ocean region and through the Strait of Malacca and the Suez Canal and the Persian Gulf in particular. So therefore, it has this so-called Malacca vulnerability, which people talk about. And therefore, it has been deploying its ships and submarines here. So the focus currently has to be China-specific. The other thing that we are worried about is the kind of arms supplies that are happening to countries in a region, particularly Pakistan. Almost 60% of the Pakistani Navy is now of Chinese origin. They have also supplied submarines to Bangladesh, though I mean, they're not really very capable submarines, but they have done that. Similarly, they are arming the Myanmar Navy as well. So are we to some extent. And so is it happening in Thailand. So gradually we are finding that in our neighborhood, a lot of arms exports from China are coming in, which is creating dependencies of these countries on China, which could impact us adversely. I think currently we are seeing what is happening in the Maldives as a salient example of what can go wrong. So that is why our strategy, I think, naturally currently is indeed China focused, India centric, but China focused.
But then, with all these threats of China that you have just mentioned, how are we countering it? I mean, what are the measures that we are taking to, see that our interests are protected and that China doesn't actually overpower us in the Indian Ocean region?
I've written a lot about this. It was there in the Times of India also a few weeks ago. But I think what is happening is that we have to invest more, that's my view, in our maritime force buildup. Building navies is an expensive proposition, but it's a long-term proposition. You can't build navies overnight. Shipbuilding programs, take close to 20 to 25 years to fructify from the time that they start. And ships themselves have a long life. Almost aircraft carriers can go more than 50 years in life. So there is a need for us to continuously strengthen our forces. Currently, we have a very capable Navy, but I think our force levels can do with some bolstering. And this is something that needs to be taken up in a progressive manner. Similarly, as I've written, our merchant marine is woefully inadequate. It has dwindled over the years due to various reasons, principally the taxes in India being very high. It is much more profitable to have transportation of cargo in foreign ships. It's cheaper. Similarly, shipbuilding, India has just 0.1% of shipbuilding of the world, being now the fourth largest economy. I think that's really not commensurate with what should be our capability. So I think a lot of work needs to be done. A lot of plans are there. The government has a Maritime India vision. They have a Sagarmala plan. They have many other initiatives that they have taken. They have global conferences that were recently held on shipping. They're held every year to attract investments. But I think a lot of policy and subsidy actions are required to be taken by the government to ensure that our maritime power builds up further. Because that's my favorite sentence, that no country has become a great power without first having been a maritime power.
So, I mean, if you can tell us, how short are we falling maybe in our naval assets, like submarines, like aircraft carriers, like ships, and precisely?
That would be, I think, Preeti, that would be a matter of detail. But, because it would, you can't put a exact number, at least since I'm not really in service. I'm sure the people in service have put in a number. We have a document that gives the requisite number of each force level that we think is desirable and required by us. So I think that is required to be met. At the minimum, I would say we have been talking about a 200 ship Navy, and we are currently around 132 odd ships. And if you talk about frontline ships, they are not more than about 45. So we need to really bolster our capability in that regard. We have a lot of capability currently also. And the good part is that shipbuilding is almost 100% indigenous, has been for quite some time. We have the capability. We built an aircraft carrier. In fact, I was in charge of the trials of that carrier in 2021, and we were successful in the first shot in the trials to go up to maximum speed, and that's doing very well. That's the INS Vikrant. So I think there is a requirement for much more support from the government for shipbuilding, warship building, civilian shipbuilding, ship repair in India, and indeed the marine economy of India, which currently contributes less than 4% of our GDP, needs to really be doubled to at least 10%. And that would also go towards making us a developed country, which is the vision of the Prime Minister also by 2047. All sectors need to contribute if we have to become a developed nation. And this is one sector that has been lagging behind.
Okay. Now, my last question before I let you go is the current crisis about India Maldives. That's taken a very interesting turn with President Muizu saying that our forces should be moved out, and even the hydrological pact being nullified and all. So, and then Maldives going to China, Muizu going to China, and then signing so many pacts there. How do you think this is going to impact our securities, scenario in this region?
This has happened before. It's not new. Basically, I think a lot of Maldivians have themselves said, prominent Maldivians, that Maldives can't escape geography. We are the closest neighbor to Maldives, barring none other. I mean, the only other country that comes somewhat close is Sri Lanka. So, and Sri Lanka itself is a small island nation. So, if there is a requirement, whenever there has been a requirement, whether it is security related, like Op Cactus in 1988, or whether it was the HADR related after the tsunami in 2004, or indeed after the COVID pandemic of 2009-20, that time I was the CNC South, the entire vaccination, medicines, masks, everything that was required by Maldives was sent by us by ship and by air, because that is the fastest way to go. From Cochin to Malé is precisely less than 20 hours by ship. So you're there the fastest. So Maldivians know, and Maldivians have a close ethnic bond with Kerala. They are afraid that their country would go underwater because of global warming. So many of them have emigrated. Most of them have residences. They come to India for medical treatment because it's the closest. The flight is just about an hour and a half. Indeed, Malé is closer to Chennai and Trivandrum than they are to Delhi. So there are these ethnic and family bonds, and so geography will not allow Maldives to go too far. This is a political issue, and the current government has won the elections using an anti-India plank. Today, also in the paper, the European Union Election Monitoring Commission has also said the same thing, that this was used or misused. They have said misused to win a slim majority. I don't think this will last, because Maldivians know where their interests lie. And as far as the military personnel or troops are concerned, everybody keeps calling them troops. They're not troops. They were basically from my command who were deputed. They are aircraft technicians. So they are there to support the Dornier and the advanced light helicopter flights that India has gifted to Dornier. The ALH is used for casualty evacuation. It is a flying ambulance. It evacuates on a daily basis people with emergencies from outlying islands to Malé, to the hospital which has been donated by India and is run by Indian doctors. So, there is a tinge of irony here, that they are sort of saying remove these so-called troops. They're not troops, they're technicians, because without them the aircraft won't fly. And the local people want the aircraft there. The Dornier is there for their security, for their EZ. So it is a political issue. I think the current administration, particularly the people at top, may be beholden to China for something which I really wouldn't know. But I think sooner or later wisdom will dawn, and they will realize that they will need to look at India as the closest friend and partner. I think we need not get too worried about it, because even China can't do much in Maldives, really. Maybe set up a
But
monitoring
China
station.
can come and in the pretext of making a port or kind of infrastructure development, they could have a base there as well.
Yeah, but very unlikely. It's a very, very small island country, and nothing much would be gained. Yes, there is a possibility. The British had a base in Gan Island. That's the only island which has a viable runway, natural runway. others are all reclaimed. So definitely a lot of Chinese investment has come in. They have done a lot of work in reclaiming, but they've also harmed the environment considerably in the Maldives. Recently, there was this thing about tourism that, storm over the ill-advised comments made by some Maldivian officials regarding the Prime Minister's visit to Lakshadweep. But having been a diver myself, and I have dived both in the Maldives and the Laccadives, and Laccadives was in my beat when I was in C South. I can tell you that the environment in the Laccadives is pristine. When you dive, you can see beautiful corals and fish. But as the Maldivians themselves will say, because of the reclamation that has happened there, there's nothing much you can really see in the Maldives. Most of the natural corals have been dredged and sucked up to make artificial beaches and resorts. And so I think Maldivians themselves have spoken out against this.
But China can surely spy from that point.
Spying today is not required. They need not come there. Spying is done today by 1,000 other ways and much more effective ways. So that old physical concept of being present somewhere for spying, I mean, they can just deploy a ship. It's much more effective. And the ship can go and another ship can come in. So, which they do regularly. So having a research station or something as they were planning is not really, to my mind, a major issue. But we will have to keep an eye and see what they are up to. But as I said, I'm very confident that they cannot really escape the bonds of geography. And sooner or later, I think the folly and the reasons why this sudden turn and closeness to China is happening will come out, as they did in the earlier dispensation also. So, and then, जैसे हिंदी में बोलते हैं फिर दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी हो जाएगा. So we will wait for that to happen.
Absolutely. So a lot of insights that you shared, Admiral Chawla, and for our viewers, I'm sure is going to be very helpful. Thank you so much for joining me on this video. And for my viewers, do like, subscribe, and share, and wait for another video and a very informative one, and a special guest that we are going to get you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. So that's it. How do you think? I'm sure it went okay.
Yeah, it went well. Just a few corrections in the biodata. You had said Eastern Fleet, it's Western Fleet.
1 second.